Each time land was enclosed, women in England broke fences, trespassed, poached, reclaimed the common land. Every hungry year, they broke into bakers, corn mills, or the barns where grain was stored for export and divided it among the crowd and paid the right price. Sometimes the local priest or magistrate would arrive and oversee the weighing and the selling. If the bakers or the merchants resisted, windows might be broken and food might be stolen, but usually everyone understood that the poor women whose names were not even recorded, were price-setting and rationing food. Then, in the 18th century, the mood changed. Merchants and the landowners stopped appeasing the crowd, and the women were named as troublemakers, identified in the court records, and their harsh punishments recorded. Part of my work in writing a history of normal women has been recognizing the normality of women, however they are named: rioting women, power-mad women, manipulative women, viragos, angels, witches. Poor medieval women had a sense of themselves, supporting each other, employing each other, naming other women as their heirs, holding other women to a standard of behavior. But legally, they were owned by their fathers or husbands and bound to stay in their communities. Only in work gangs and guilds could they have a sense of themselves as a group with a distinct, shared female life. They did not record themselves as a group. They did not define themselves, describe themselves, nor publish, nor are there many diaries of individual women's lives until the English Civil Wars in the middle of the 17th century drove women into writing petitions and demanding rights from the men-only Parliament, keeping journals of their experiences, recipes for their medicines, private letters to keep families together and businesses intact, and then, finally, publishing so that women could read about themselves. They asked why women were not in the creation story as an equal to Adam. In the explosion of women writing fiction in the 18th century, they asked, how is a woman different to a man? About 1860, they asked, why can't we get a divorce on the same grounds as men? Around 1890, they started to ask, why can't we vote? Around 1950, they asked, why are we not in history? And women historians began the process of rereading the historical records to find out what the women were doing in their dark and silent past, while men were shining a spotlight and amplifying themselves. These are the historians who produced the first great histories of women, succeeded by biographers of heroines and of the family, social historians of movements, and then the editors of lists of 10 memorable women or top 20 names. All these publications help put women into history. But the biographies emphasize exceptional individuals. Histories of the family see women as mothers and daughters, biology again. The histories of groups speak of witches or suffragettes or midwives, focusing on bizarre or campaigning groups, not the normality of women's lives. And the short lists of women are too short. Only 20 women in history? Even Winston Churchill counted 98. Indebted to all these authors, what I wanted to write was a huge book about women, those engaged in unusual practices and those living uneventful lives, those who were up against their society and those gliding along the top of it, the few we have heard of and the millions that we have not. And I wanted to show that murderers and brides, housewives and parrots, whores and weavers, farmers and milliners, female husbands, hermits, the chaste, the jousters, painters, nuns, queens, witches and soldiers are all part of women's history, all part of our national history, even though they lived and died without a man noticing them for long enough to write down their names. When we write normal women into the history of our country, we restore ourselves, our sisters, our friends, and our foremothers. And this is dedicated to my mother, Elaine Wedd, a normal woman like all heroines.